Hi, this is Nathan Hikes with the GROWMARK FS Agronomy Minute. With the weather getting cooler and a lot of acres opened up with silage harvest or early grain harvest, it's time to start thinking about small grain establishment. To do this, we first need to decide what small grain is going to best meet our needs. Wheat, winter wheat, is a classic choice. That would be soft red winter wheat in most of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. If we're looking for grain, that's a great option. It can also be a nice forage option if we're looking for a little bit later boot stage chopping. And it can be a good cover crop. If we're looking for something maybe a little on the earlier side and we have a market for it, we can harvest barley for grain, or it can be a nice silage, especially at dough stage, for an energy feed. A great forage option is triticale for an intermediate harvest timing. And then if we're gonna face issues with either late planting or a lot of diseases potential, then rye could be a great option for us with its a little bit hardier nature. It can also be used for straw or a little bit earlier forage as well. So once we've zeroed in on what our needs are going to be, we can select a species or a combination of species in different fields that are going to help us meet those goals. Now, oftentimes small grain seed can get into short supply, so as soon as we plan and know what we're going to need, we ought to order our seed to make sure we have what we need. Then we need to consider our planter. Make sure everything is taken care of on the planter, that we have good discs, good openers, so that it's going to function properly to allow us to get that good stand. So once we've got our species selected, our seed lined up, and we know our planter's in good condition, we're going to want to then look at some of the planting considerations. So first, planting depth. We want to make sure we're getting at least an inch deep, up to an inch and a quarter, inch and a half. That'll protect our seed against some birds or other pests that might try to pull out the young plant in the seed, and also get it down where some of the freeze will be less of an issue to help our winter standability and help it to progress into the spring in a good stand. As far as planting population, we really want to look at that in terms of seed per acre and not pounds per acre. So we want to shoot for probably around 1.3 to 1.7 million seeds per acre. Then we'll use the seeds per pound that'll be listed on the bag or the box to convert that into the pounds per acre that we're likely going to need to set our drill. Now, based on the different seed size, even just in wheat, we could have a big range for the same number of seeds per acre in pounds per acre. So that's why we want to use that seeds per pound and convert it. So this will probably come out 125, 150 pounds per acre. Now that'll oftentimes be less for some of our other grains like barley because they have a lighter weight per bushel and generally more seeds in each pound. So we're going to take our seeds per acre, use our seeds per pound to convert that, pounds per acre, set our drill, and then be ready to go. We're going to want to be on the higher end of that if we're going into a high residue no-till situation, if we're a little on the later end for whichever seed we're going to plant, or if we're going into forage, we definitely want more plants out there and more planting material. So that brings up the question of planting date. So that's going to vary by where we are in our latitude. So in the southern areas, we can probably be 1st to 15th of October for winter wheat. If we get up in the northern areas of PA and into New York, it's probably going to be mid-September to the end of September, or maybe even a little earlier than that when we get real far. So that's our wheat dates. Generally, if we're using triticale for forage, we're going to want to be 2 to 3 weeks earlier than that, and then kind of in between those for barley. So to get a good idea of when you should be planting in your exact area, you can look at your Hessian fly free date. That's generally the start, around the start of when we want to start planting that winter wheat, and then kind of the 2 weeks after that is going to be the optimal time. So those dates range from about September 20th to October 1st in Pennsylvania. So that kind of gives that range. It's going to be happen later in the south, be earlier up in the north. So when we know how and when we're planting, there's a few other considerations we want to look at. Our background fertility. We want to make sure we have sufficient P and K at planting. So especially if it's after a corn silage crop like this field right here, that has taken up a lot of our P and K there. So we want to make sure we put down enough P and K at planting. We don't need a lot of N at planting, probably no more than 20 pounds. It's a lot more critical to get that N on early in the spring then to promote that spring growth and spring tillering. But having adequate fertility and an early enough planting date is going to help ensure that we get fall tillers, which are going to be where a lot of our yield comes from. Now, if we do plant later than optimum, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a hard stop and won't get any crop. We just have to temper our expectations that we're probably going to get lower grain yields and lower forage yields, and then we really need to be on our management game, getting N out early and taking care of things in the spring to help get as much as we can from a little bit later planted crop. If we are forced into a later planting, especially in a forage situation, rye is going to be our best option, as it can really handle those later plantings a lot better than wheat, barley, or triticale. One other consideration for our fertility is the pH. For most of these small grains, we want our pH in that 6 to 7 range like most of our crops. Barley is an exception, as it likes its pH a little bit higher, at least 6.5, but it can even go 7 or 8. So we want to make sure we have our liming taken care of ahead of time if we're moving into barley. One final consideration is herbicides and weed control. We first need to make sure we look at what herbicide program we used on the crop that was before this, make sure there's no carryovers, especially in soybeans, that it's going to hurt our stand. And then we need to make sure that if we have a weed issue, that we take care of as much of that with some burn down and or residual in the fall, so we're not setting ourselves up for a winter annual problem in the spring. So these are some tips to help make sure that you can get your small grain stand off to the best possible start. If you're interested in maximizing your small grain opportunities and getting the resources that you need to take advantage of that opportunity, please reach out and contact your nearest GROWMARK FS location or sales representative today.